Here are 7 things to do before the end of the year to make your retirement better. Number 1, if you're over 65, then it is time to review your healthcare coverage because open enrollment for Medicare and ACA insurance, that's happening right now, October 15th to December 7th. So you can decide to stay the same, or you can review your options with an agent and just make sure that the coverage meets your needs and also fits your budget. The second thing can help you pay less tax. It's actually 2 tax planning moves you might be able to make. First, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Dave Zoller, and my team and I, we've been helping people retire for the last decade and a half at Streamline Financial. So the things in this video are some of the things that we're doing for our clients, and I wanted to share it with you too. So if that's helpful, then let me know by clicking the like button. But onto the 2 tax moves. So this can work if you have a brokerage account, like an individual account or a trust account, or maybe a joint account at any firm, it could be Fidelity or Vanguard or Schwab or wherever. You might be able to take advantage of tax loss harvesting and tax gain harvesting. So first, tax gain harvesting, that's one that's used less, but this is when you can pay 0% tax on long-term capital gains. That's even if you have a nice income coming in from your investment accounts. So if you're retired and you're pulling money from investment accounts, you can actually use this. You might be able to use it while you're still working too, but here's some of the rules. I'll show you the rules coming up. But this usually happens when you've got a brokerage account or you've got cash at the bank, and that's what you're using for income. Because when you're using cash at the bank or you're using different investments in your brokerage account, a lot of times the taxable income is pretty low those years. As long as you're not using your traditional IRAs or 401ks, because when you take out of 401ks, all of that money is taxable to you. But if you're using bank and sometimes brokerage, the taxable income's quite low. But let me show you some of the numbers here. So here's the simple way to understand it. Say you bought an investment for $50K, it went up to $100,000. So really there's a gain of $50,000. If you were to sell that $100,000 investment, you'd pay tax on the $50K. But let's look at this tax gain harvesting numbers. Here's long-term capital gains tax rates by filing status. Let's take married filing joint. So about $94,000 or less. If your taxable income is that, then any gains, long-term capital gains, say that $50K that you just sold, would be taxed at the 0% rate. Now, what's the benefit of that? Is there, even if you don't need the money, should I do it anyways? Well, what you can do is if you do this right here, what you're essentially doing is you can in the future buy back and reset the cost basis. So now the cost basis is $100K of that same investment. Again, you might want to look at, talk to a financial professional about this, but it's a way to reset the cost basis so that in the future, if you do ever use it or sell, then you'll have less of a gain at that time. So something to think about, tax gain harvesting, worth mentioning to your planner if you've got one. And then last thing, just on that, it's beneficial if you expect to have a higher tax rate, tax bracket in the future, because that will lock in the gains now at a lower tax rate or 0% tax rate. So next, let's move on to tax loss harvesting. That's if you've already got investment gains, or say that you've got investments in your brokerage account and they're kicking out dividends or kicking out interest. And you're paying tax on that every year. Even if you're not using those things, you still have to pay tax on it. And same thing if you've got a fund. Within that fund, the manager sometimes, if it's tax inefficient, will buy and sell. And in years like this, if they're selling, sometimes they're selling and recognizing capital gains in the fund. You recognize that as well because you're the owner of that fund. But let me show you an example of tax loss harvesting. This is the trigger over here. And if you've got, like I just said, if you've got gains or if you sold something or whatever it is, if it's triggering capital gains, you might have other investments in other accounts or the same account that might be at a loss. Maybe you bought it for 50 and now the value is at 25,000 and there's a unrealized loss of 25K. Well, the tax loss harvesting says you could sell that and you can offset the 20K gain over here and essentially wipe out that what you would have had to pay tax on. Now, important rule here is the wash sale rule. So you can't buy back into the same exact or like type investment here once you sell it for a loss. There's ways around this. Again, it's important to talk to the CPA or CFP here when doing the strategy, but this is something to think about. It's a way to just pay less tax the year that you might have some capital gains within these brokerage accounts. And for this example, the actual dollar savings would be around $8,000 saved in taxes. Now, if either of these are in play for you this year, it's going to be helpful to know what the mutual fund distributions are going to be. That's usually happening now or in December is when these mutual fund companies will give the list and show you what sort of distributions to expect from these funds. And again, just a reminder, if you own mutual funds, index funds, it's common for those investments to have taxable income within the fund itself, and then you're recognizing that as well because you're an owner of that mutual fund. This is what catches clients off guard when it's tax time. It's March and they're filing their tax returns, and then they're looking at their 1099 and they see these capital gains, even though they didn't sell anything, or they see this big dividends or interest they didn't expect from these funds. And it's sometimes an unpleasant surprise because they just weren't planning for it. So knowing what the distributions are at the end of the year and then planning for that is a good idea if you don't have the tax efficient funds. But how do you find out the distributions? You can check the fund provider's website. So that's whether it's Vanguard or Fidelity or T. Rowe Price, wherever, you can go to the website. You can search for distribution information or year-end distributions. Kind of search the website for that. There's also, the easiest way is probably call them up, or if you've got an advisor, your advisor should be doing this already, and you can just ask directly to a person. So let's move on to the next one, to the year-end planning thing to think about, and that's related to gifting to family or to charity. So this is an excellent time to evaluate your year-end giving strategy. Now let's use the example of having a reason to give, and it's partly related to tax reasons. If this is a year of high income or a sale, business sale, or something like that, where you want to offset, and this is the year to do the giving, but you don't know exactly where to give to yet, think about a donor advised fund, because you can give. I'll pull up my iPad here. You can give to a DAF, and it could be cash or stock. It's probably too late to do real estate, but pretend it's cash or stock. You can give to this in this year, get the full deduction this year, and then you have an account where in 2025 or 2026, you can give out money. It's not in your estate anymore, but you can control where and when the money goes. So it's kind of like a little charitable foundation without all the charitable cost. And that's something that has to happen before year end. It's December 31st for all giving, charity, and to family as well, if you're going to be doing the limit on gifts to family. And then the other thing too, if you're in your 70s and you've got RMDs, required minimum distributions, there's qualified charitable distributions or donations, QCD, and that is giving from your IRA directly to charity. It satisfies the RMD, and you don't have to pay tax on the RMD if you don't need it. Then the next thing, year-end planning strategy, is the 401k match. Just make sure that you are getting the full 401k match if your employer offers that. It's essentially free money. I know John, he was contributing 3% to his 401k. He had quite a bit of savings already. He was contributing 3% at this time. Income was $60K, and he was unaware that the employer matched up to 50% of the contributions up to 6%. So that's 3% he's missing out on. Now, is that even any money? Well, here's the dollar amounts. By not maxing this out, he was losing over a total of the last 5 years about $10,000, because take the last 5 years. Year one, $1,500 he missed out on. So over 5 years, that's $7,500. Add a little bit of growth on that. That's about $10,000 with compounded growth. So that's something, free money, that's not in his account now because he was just missing out on seems like a small match. So what do you do here? Contact HR or your benefits provider and just confirm you've got the match requirement happening and you're getting the full match if that's what you want, or speak to your advisor. And sometimes the plans have advisors that you can call and just confirm and ask and make sure it's happening. Then also with your 401k, if you're got just a few years left before retirement, think about maxing it out if you're not maxing it out. And if you can afford that, get that money into tax deferred land, or if you're doing Roth 401k, either one might be a good way to just really fund it with the last few years. So think about that. And then also other retirement contributions with IRA, if you're eligible, or Roth IRA outside of the 401k, and HSAs. Now, those are not year end. 401k, yes, but with traditional and with Roth and HSAs, you should be able to up until tax filing date. So you've got some time there, but something to think about as you're planning your retirement. So those are a few year-end strategies to consider, talk to your CFP about to make your retirement a little bit better. But then also it might be worth watching this one on the 7 essential retirement accounts or accounts to have as you're planning your retirement. And then I'll see you in that video. If this was helpful, then give it a like, and then I'll see you over there. Take care.